Hello, YouTubers, friends, compatriots, bootlicker shills, desolate sirs, peasants, vassals, minions, meat sacks, and also my Kurdish friends, and also my Turkish friends. I'm useful idiot. Welcome and good morning. And as promised, I wanted to do another video on the Turkish war on the Kurds, which has accelerated and escalated considerably since I did a video earlier this year on this new Turkish war on the Kurds. Because at that point it was somewhat limited because Turkey was going after Kurdish forces in northern Iraq and also in northern Syria and bombing across border. But now more details are coming out about dramatic escalation inside Turkey, as well as this recent spate of bombings. And as I proposed in my video about Russia withdrawing from Syria, I tend to think there's some sort of connection there because I think Russia wisely removed themselves from the situation before Turkey ends up escalating it. I could be wrong. I'm still looking for more material out there speculating on exactly what Russia's motivations are right now. So anyway, let's go look at some of these details. First of all, we have the Ankara bombing in Turkey last February, and 30 people were killed from an explosion. And now recently we had the second Ankara bombing with 37 killed and over 100 injured. And I think it might even be a series of 3 bombings. I can't remember. I think there was a third one before that. But surprisingly, it hasn't exactly been used completely as a false flag event or catalyst for dramatic escalation by Turkey, although Erdogan has promised to escalate these efforts against the Kurds, and within Turkey certainly that is true. So we have these 2 bombings, and now we also have these stories coming out of the towns of Sirte and Diyarbakir, and my apologies for butchering those names, but two large Kurdish cities in Turkey, and they've had a lot of dramatic violence there. And of course, Diyarbakir is a very large Kurdish enclave or city there, and I'll attach a video below that shows what they claim to be 1 million people in the square there, chanting Kurdish patriotic songs, and it's pretty staggering to see that picture. When you see that, you can understand why these people think they have a right to some more autonomy and or independence. Quite a sight to see. But anyway, this same pattern has been repeated in those 2 major Kurdish cities and a lot of other smaller towns throughout southern Turkey and along the border area. And the city of Sirte particularly looks like a battleground in Syria or Iraq. And that's one of the best ways I think I can display the fact that there is a serious war going on in southern Turkey against the Kurds. This city is completely destroyed, and they're setting up curfews and blockades and then bringing in tanks and armor to deal with essentially civilian populations. Tens of thousands have been displaced, and debates about whether there's hundreds or thousands killed. Officially killed since last July are 350 Turkish security, 300 Turkish militants, and 200 civilians. But I would imagine that the totals are much higher than that, particularly as this goes on. And the Turkish government seems to want to downplay the scale of these operations, but one article pointed out that 20,000 police and military launched security operation against Kurds in Yuksekov, close to the Iraqi border. And Sirnak and Nusaybin are 2 other towns and cities that have been subjected to the same treatment. So we have a number of cities here, 4, 5, 6, 7, just the ones I brought up, and I assume that there's many more cities involved that are being subjected to these so-called security operations by massive military and security police forces. It's a war by any name. And then, of course, you factor in the fact that Turkey is also bombing in northern Iraq as part of a retaliation for the recent Ankara bombing, 11 planes involved in 18 targets in northern Iraq. But that's an ongoing situation. So we have Turkey escalating essentially its assault on northern Iraq, justifying that they have the right to defend themselves, which of course is what everyone says when they use this kind of aggression. And then also we have, of course, the continuous bombing of northern Syria by Turkish forces. I assume that's going on in spite of the peace talks going on right now. And in fact, things are getting more dramatic as this recent story today about Kurdistan declaring a federation, which I'm going to do a separate video on. And of course, Turkey has been bombing the whole area up along the Kurdish region of northern Syria for a while in hopes of slowing down this movement of the Kurds there, consolidating territory and defeating ISIS in the field. And so once again, a good example of the fact that Turkey doesn't necessarily want ISIS defeated in parts of Syria where it doesn't serve their interests. So kind of interesting as well that, of course, the U.S. position, once again, we're on the wrong side of history with countries like Saudi Arabia and Turkey. And a U.S. spokesman continues to call the PKK terrorists and supports Turkey in these operations, although at the same time warning of aggression against the Kurds in northern Syria. But of course, as far as Turkey and the U.S., you can't have it both ways, and Turkey will continue to go after Kurds wherever they find them. And I always found that rather ironic too, because Turkey can use northern Kurdistan in Iraq as sort of a vassal state in a way, because Turkish business interests are so intertwined with northern Kurdistan, and they completely support the construction of that region. Maybe they hope that will be a beacon and draw the Kurds from within Turkey and everywhere else in the region, and they'll go there. That might be part of their strategy, but just funny how they can have a very good relationship with a good portion of the Kurdish population and not the ones inside their own country. And as usual, of course, Turkey can just label these essentially freedom fighters as terrorists. That's the international trend. And the debate will go on forever, depending on what your geopolitical view is of who are the terrorists and who are the freedom fighters. And that's a debate that is too big for this particular video right now. But anyway, like I say, when you see the amount of Kurds in this city at this rally, it's amazing that this group of people don't have more autonomy, particularly such a high percentage of the population of Turkey. And the Russians are actually speculating there's thousands of casualties because they have more access inside, and I would agree with that. And then, of course, along with this war atmosphere that's going on with Turkey against the Kurds throughout that region, is we have all the domestic crackdown too that always accompanies these kind of war efforts, no matter who the country is. And so we have major censorship and arrests of journalists and the close down of major newspapers. So very dramatic. And Erdogan, I would assume, is straining his relationships with his supposed allies in the United States, and certainly in the EU. He's spent a lot of time insulting member countries of the EU and the EU as a whole, and seems to not really care what the U.S. Thinks about what it is doing. But that reflects a lot of countries in that region, like Saudi Arabia, that also buck U.S. Foreign policy goals in a way. But of course, that's a dubious point I bring up, because the fact is that we don't really know what the agenda is, and the United States, of course, could be arm in arm with Saudi Arabia. Certainly, where the U.S. is on arm in arm with Saudi Arabia in its involvement in Yemen. And I would suspect that in some way that the U.S. is certainly involved with Turkey in this region and its policies. Probably a trade-off in that Turkey doesn't exacerbate the situation on a larger scale when it potentially could, and has threatened to do so on many occasions. So maybe the United States is just throwing Turkey a bone. But Barack Obama has come out and said that Erdogan is a failure and an authoritarian. So it would appear that this relationship is breaking down to a certain extent. So, and then you add the refugee crisis and the Erdogan's blackmail of the Europeans. It's just really getting to be a pretty nasty situation. And this new large-scale war against the Kurds within Turkey and these border regions is just another example of that. I'm a useful idiot. Don't you be one too.